Мне сказали, что мы наконец-то можем начинать.
So, I was told that we can begin. Good afternoon, nearly good evening. Thanks for staying with us. I will try to make this session as exciting as possible. So that's why I'm staying here at the moderator's chair. We'll discuss about work here because I see office employees every day, but some days there is a factor of burning out or inspiration, and sometimes it's the backbone of how they work. So recently, I found it company. The essence of what we do is to inspire people, not to lead themselves to the self-exhaustion. I'm happy to be the moderator for this session because office is the environment we visit more often than home, or at least we spend more time there. Thank you. So I would like to introduce to you our today's speakers. So let's begin from the other end of the room. Michelle Roshkind, Senior Vice President of Architecture, the WE company. If you heard about the work, which is about to arrive to Russia, it's very exciting. The next speaker is Alexei Marmot, professor at Bartlett University College of London, so a person who is in consulting and research, and of course he will influence what is going on to happen on the market of offices. And of course we have a representative from Moscow, Denis Bondar, founder of Today Lab company, which specializes in consulting of office real estate. He's here and now, so let's applaud to our speakers to move to our questions. I would like to begin. Let's begin with the future of work, of our jobs. So half of people get paid for being architects, managers or engineers, and sometimes an office environment is actually a barrier.
Is the future of work in general, and in office maybe? Easy one, easy, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear? Just a little question. What's the future of work? So if we talk about office work, I've been looking at office work for quite a long time. I've written books about it, and I've been engaged in the past with lots of different companies who were trying to radically change the way they worked. The basis on which that advice was given was to really try and do it as evidence-based consultative design. Nobody knows the future of work better than people in a company, so they have to say what they imagine the future to be. On the other hand, when I now look at the future of work, it's changing more and more rapidly, largely because of the technical tools. The idea that workspace is everywhere is a relatively recent phenomenon. And what's really important, I think, in office work is that a higher and higher proportion of the labor force in every country are actually office workers. With every passing year, more and more people are office workers, even though they might not have an office. So it's a really quite difficult term, but by office work, one normally means people who work with their minds rather than their bodies, people whose brain is very important in the process of work, people who work usually sitting down rather than standing up or being mobile, and who can increasingly do that in many different locations. So for the future of workplace, home is a workplace, coffee shops are workplaces, bars, etc. Every form of transportation is a workplace. One now walks through the streets and feels offended if you can't actually get an internet signal and continue to have your phone calls or your access to your emails. everywhere, anywhere, at all times. So we have this phenomenon of, on the one hand, office work dramatically increasing and having flown out of the office. And that's one of the challenges to face up to in the future.
Okay, may I ask a personal question, all three of you? What's your workspace usually, your personal workspace? Do you work in office? Where do you work?
Okay, so I have 3 bases that are still things with desks. One of them is a hot desk in a big room, and this is at part of a university where I'm a senior professor. And I have no privacy, and I have no files, and I have no immediate storage, but I have access to all the resources of the university, all the resources of the library, all the resources of my colleagues, and to meeting spaces. I have a similar place in another part of the university several miles away, but most of my work is done at home in various locations, but one in particular where I do spend more time.
Hello. I think you just said it. You work everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, I see all my friends and they're working on a plane, on the street. They're having a phone call that's about work. They go to the office and they work in the office. They go back home and they work in their home. So it's I think that the line is blurred, no? I think one of the most incredible things about, or why I really wanted to join WeWork as a company is because, first of all, they noticed that, we spend more time, obviously, where we work rather than with our family, so work becomes your family. So they were questioning, like, why should it feel like work if we're spending so much time with all these people? So even there's the slogans that a place where you make a life and not just a living. It's starting to change and resonates with many people that think that way, that say, well, I'm a freelancer, but I really want to feel that I belong to a certain community. I don't want to have a 9-to-5 desk, but I want to have places where I can really understand how I need to work. So I don't think that anybody today works in one single place. I think it's very rare that you have an assigned seat in a designated kind of area, no?
So, but you personally, where do you usually work? Like most of the time, for example?
I travel a lot.
Okay.
And most of the time, my best work, I can tell you, must be on planes, where I have a long time and I don't have... I'm even upset that now you have internet on planes, because I liked that you didn't have internet on planes, because it's like, okay, I can sit down, I can write, I can review something, I can sketch something, and I have like this kind of silence time. Of course, when you land and you have signal, then everything is over. No,
I know people who make several books during the airplanes, so that's how they become writers, actually. Okay, Denise, how about you? Where do you work? Да, на английском, конечно, на русском.
Все очень просто.
So it's very easy. The most productive time for me are first hours of the day at home, and I will not repeat regarding bus or plane, as our colleagues told us. Well, nowadays you work everywhere, but place you work mainly is home.
That's this topic with the boundaries. So basically, we just said that there is no line between private life, let's say, that we used to say about private life and work. So if it's not, how it affects us, how it affects the effectiveness of work, maybe what kind of solutions is to make this line still maybe in our minds with the space. So what's your idea about that? Can you talk about that?
Well, first of all, for a lot of people, they still do office work in one location all the time, with the same tools every day, with access to papers, with access to a desk, with access to fixed phones, they still exist, and so on. Actually, that's probably the mass of office workers are in that category still across the world. At earlier session, I was presenting some of the data that in the most office-based countries, from analysis that I've done, about 65% of the working population you could call office workers, albeit working from different locations. And the issue of what do you do if you're in the category of office worker who perhaps doesn't have an office, who moves all the time, and is potentially never feeling really settled, potentially always open to interruptions, potentially being their own interrupter because of these wonderful tools. I can see people in the audience using them as we speak. Some of you are perhaps using it for matters to do with this conference. I'm sure some of them, you don't have to put up your hand, but some of you are probably using it for other purposes. And that's fine, because we all have lives beyond work. But this idea of the constant distraction is something that we do know affects the brain, that it interrupts the flow. A lot of people talk about their best work happening when you're in the flow. And to get to that state of being in the flow requires time, dedication, concentration, perhaps quiet, certainly control over extraneous knowledge that you really don't want to know about. It's probably done best by yourself, not in an open plan office, not in a coffee shop. And that's where the crucial ideas sometimes come from. But that's not the only way. Our brain works in many complicated ways. And sometimes we actually do our best thinking work when we're not even trying to think about it at all. You go for a walk at the end of the day on your way home, and suddenly all sorts of things snap into your consciousness that you know you had to think about, but you weren't consciously thinking about them, but your subconscious was, and then they're there. So we are just beginning to learn, neuroscientists are just beginning to learn a little bit about these brain functions that might be really important in office work. We don't yet know how to apply that knowledge. We can see little examples, but we can't yet give clear guidance to architects, to company directors, to then make the perfect environment in which great work happens. It's still at an early stage of knowledge in understanding those very complex relationships.
Thank you so much. And from this point of view, Misha, can you tell us more about, because you build the environment, first of all. You build like the thing that everybody wants to copy during these days, because it's very hard to copy the environment, but it's also very hard to make it probably. So could you tell us more how you do that and what's the main points?
I think, exactly, thanks. First of all, to clarify a little bit, I just joined the company to do the face of the architecture of the company. I was not involved in the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just talking exactly about the space, because we just come to the idea that we work everywhere, so the space is important at least.
But I'm super excited, because coming in as an architect and trying to put a face to a company, with everything that's happening on the inside, it's funny that people think that we're a co-working company, and we're much, much, much more than that, no? We're a company that first set up a platform to listen to how people were reacting in different places. And by understanding how people were reacting, we managed to give them something that they would feel more part of that community. Either the local coffee guy or that became the barista, or the local wellness person that came and did a class of something. So it's not, I always say that it's very important to do the hardware. No, you can do the best piece of hardware and you have a magnificent architecture. But who's doing the software? Who's providing the software? And what software does this hardware have? So people that think that providing a space is, oh, I made it fun, it looks fun, it's going to work, it probably won't work. It might look great, but you need somebody to activate those spaces. You need somebody to care. When somebody cares about their community, I think that's the most important thing. And now that the company has been growing, I think that because of these economies of scale and because we have almost 500 buildings all around the world today, we become cultural embassies. We can learn from India what's happening. We can learn from Israel. We can learn from Russia's opening next month. We can learn from Latin America. So that that is worth so much in terms of knowledge, what we can do with that information to provide more solutions. And again, we're not a company that provides one solution and that's it, and that's how we do it. We learn over the process, and the first buildings we did are very different than the new ones, and we keep on learning. And now that we're going to have a face and we're going to design buildings with the real estate part of the company, we need to rethink how are windows, what do windows look like, what are lobbies, what are terrace spaces. So we have a chance to do that from the inside out rather than the outside in. So I think now to me, it's a thrilling moment to be in the company and to have Bjarke Ingels as Chief Architectural Advisor, where we can have these amazing conversations, because as architects, we're always talking about how society is changing. We're listening and seeing society because we're going to design buildings for that ever-changing society, not only as a working environment, but as a living environment as in our daily lives.
Can you show us, and maybe in some examples, because it's kind of, the words that we all kind of understand, but maybe we have a presentation, I know, that we can look at. So maybe you can show us some examples exactly how you do that as an architect.
Let me put the microphone on. In the presentation, it was a little bit more of first stuff. Again, everybody, when you're going to do something, I don't know if you take yoga classes or whatever you believe in, when you do something, people tell you put an intention to something before you do it. No? So when we work as a company, they decided to say we're now the we company that has all these other parts. They said the mission is to elevate the world's consciousness. How? I don't know how. We're working in the process of making just people have a sense of awareness, have a sense of that we belong to a community, that we interact with each other, and that it's important to have this place where it's not only about me, no? So, I mean, let me go over, because the presentation was a little bit about how I joined the company. But again, this idea where people make a life and not just a living, and really calling a place more we than work, no? So it's not only about what I do is really important. What you do is as important as the other guy sitting there, because he's also working. And it doesn't matter if he has one desk and you have 10,000 people working in 7 floors of the building. It's about what are we doing to community. Another great example, for instance, is we've had companies joining WeWork temporarily because they were refurbishing their buildings in New York. And then when they left the WeWork to go to their buildings, they said, oh, we're missing something. We don't want to go back to our buildings. We want to come back to the place where the financial guys were mixed with the lawyers and they were mixed with the creative people, because that's something that we also are not understanding as a society. Big companies, they put their company and divide it, and then they hide the financial guys, they hide the lawyers, they only want their clients to see the creative people, no? And we tend to mix everything up, because at the end of the day, that's the place where you're having the coffee. You end up talking to people. So let me see if there's other examples. Well, let me go back. So we have these centers of gravity that you have a kitchen, no? You have a kitchen where everybody has access to. The other thing is that a member from a WeWork in a certain country has access to every WeWork in the world. So that is something also very important. If you travel, I can access the same place. I don't have a designated desk, but I can use the amenities. And not only use the amenities, I'm there and I'm going to see the local graffiti artist who might have done something. I'm going to learn about a writer who's showing his book or doing a reading about his book. So I actually feel that I'm learning something. So it's very important to make people understand we are this constant culture that is thriving inside a space that you can learn a lot, or you can just say it as, it's just a co-working space, no? Let me see if I have some of the other images. Again, it's something that it's ever-changing, so even a person, an entrepreneur or a kid that has one desk feels different, feels important, he's curious. The bigger companies that might be a little bit more established feel shaken a little bit in a good way, or provoked. So instead of hiring their cool hunters to go outside and figure out what the culture is happening in other places, it becomes, I try to explain this to other companies. I say, how much money do companies spend on going to a TED Talk or going to Summit or all these important lectures, or even what we're doing now, to feel inspired? But actually the inspiration comes after the talk because everybody's talking about it in the coffee, no? In the coffee or either sitting down and having lunch. And that's what happens every day inside of WeWork. All those conversations are happening of what did somebody do during the day, no? Another thing that, for instance, is important that we do is by not having an assigned seat, or you can have your office, but all these other spaces that are inside of our buildings, people move a lot, and they're constantly either reserving the meeting room, or they're reserving a certain space, or they're going out or going to the terrace. And that, the mobility inside the building is very, very different. I have never been in a place where people move so much. And they're not moving so much because they're hyperactive or they don't want to sit down. They're moving because for the first time somebody told them, you can plan your day. Plan your 9 to 10 meeting, then your 11 to 12, then your 3 o'clock, and then move around as freely as you want. And I was trying to explain to my daughter the other day, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I was trying to explain to her that this feels more like school, like when you finished once studying mathematics and then the bell rang and then you changed from the math room to the gym and you went to the gym. So that freedom that kids have in schools, it's what you feel really in a vibrant space. And again, because we are paying attention as a company. We are interested in the local culture. We are interested in having impact and creating all these programs that we have of engagement to communities. And we're feeding off that. We're listening to that. And that's, to us, is like the most valuable asset we have as a company, to be able to provide now a school called We Grow, or places like We Live.
May I ask you a question? From the architectural point of view, according to WeWorks, like, there are a lot of them all over the world. So you have a guideline for architects who work on the project. So how does it work?
Well, there's guidelines that give you the basic stuff that we always use. So all the WeWorks have the same components, but we have the community managers of each of the countries engaging the community. So we bring in, as I was saying, either the local artist or the local barista or coffee shop guy, and we're having all those conversations to really make it, we don't want to become a chain that just repeats and all the countries look exactly the same. They have the same atmosphere, but it's, again, I try to explain it as a platform of the physical world for things to happen. It's a platform where, because we're paying attention, we don't provide 100% solutions. We provide a space, and we see how that's reacting. And by the way it's reacting, either we put more office space or we put more open space and amenities for that to happen. I think we can still pay more attention to the culture, which is what I'm happy about, because now as an architect, I want to read as much of the local community as possible. And that's why I talk about we are these cultural embassies in the different parts of the world today, no?
And how about the privacy? Because sometimes, like, according to that, more office space, more private space, more open space, it's like sometimes it's very noisy, sometimes it's very stressful, as we talk just a few minutes before. So how about the privacy according to the architecture projects of such kind of spaces?
Well, you provide all these possibilities. When I was saying you provide all these spaces to plan your day, you can have your private booth, a one isolated person booth. You can have a 4-people meeting room, you can have a 2-people meeting room. So we provide all these different solutions inside. And you can have, most people that have an assigned space, they normally work outside. They don't want to have an assigned space. So they might be, maybe, I don't know what's the proportion in statistics, but I know that they spend less time in their own personal desk because there's something about the vibrancy that they like. And of course, more people that are, it's funny because older generations, we want more isolation and we want more concentrated space. I think that the newer generations, because maybe they were brought up in this chaotic and overstimulated world, they can say, okay, I have 10 minutes to do the presentation. They get in a room, they sit down, and they do it in 10 minutes. And I'm surprised because it would take me maybe an hour or more. But the whole idea, and again, we cannot polarize as society, saying it's black or it's white. It's either all open space or it's all private space. I think you provide different things and you test them. And that's where I think, again, we're a great company because something didn't work and then we take that out and implement something else. And we're learning from society, which that I think is a great thing to happen.
Thank you so much, and I'm really keen now to listen to what's happening in Moscow with all these ideas, because According to my feeling, сейчас перейду на русский, мой когнитивный...
And I will speak now English. I have a story of my own. Very often when I come to companies and say, come on, let's make a meditation for your company. And they say, okay, we are all for it, but we have no place for it. And this is about everything. Studies of English, development of people, and there is no place there, and not physically, but all the conference rooms, they are all in glass, and it looks as though people are sitting in the kind of aquarium surrounded by glass seen from everywhere. This is why I've touched upon privacy, Dennis. From your point of view, in Moscow co-workings and in offices, who are the people sitting there? What do you see? And do you see the same thing the colleagues before have specified? Well, things are more or less the same, but Moscow and a year or two behind the trends of Europe. But mostly they are the same. Speaking about co-working, there's one more thing, and this is enlargement of the average customer of co-working. This is a classical evolution from startup and medium-sized business to big operations. Now we can call big companies, and we know most of them, and these are Yandex, Sberbank, Gazprom, ORT, the television, they book space for co-working. So earlier there were just smaller project teams booking places for co-working. Today we can see when Yandex company takes the whole co-working, and there is and they are the only customer there. And sometimes we can ask them, you're so big, why cannot you make offices for you and rent them or own them? And here another issue arises. This is what's happening today, the outsourcing of everything concerning office, concerning support. This cannot and should not necessarily be co-working. This is booking furniture, subscription to offices of one company. It's a huge company, 140-year history. It is among top 20, I think I know what company you're speaking about. They say the super rich company with resources, but they don't have an opportunity or resource to deal with their office, not only office, everything else but their main product. I mean, they have an office, but they set it up once. There are two-story building in the city, and then fix it, and then a year or two after that, the company goes on, and the office is the same, and there is a gap between the office the company really requires and the office which really exists, and this becomes a headache, a problem for the tops. They spend a lot of resources for that, and they feel everything is bad. So, I mean, any big company or not so big company, they want to give the majority of issues for outsourcing, and this is which is highly in demand today. One more issue I would like to draw your attention to for co-working spaces, and this is personalization, personal approach. We pushed a project in Moscow, finalizing, we can say that any company with more than 10 employees, they have their individual planning for co-working spaces. This can be easily explained. Imagine sales people and developers working together in one room of glass, Well, I don't think the salespeople will be happy. They feel shy speaking on the telephone loudly. The developers, they feel they are fun and they don't like the sales. So this is an oxymoron. I want to be it here and now. Let it be an outsourcing, but it should be individually created for me. So thus we created about 50 variants of functions we could use as a Lego so that was ready plus customized solution, just combined. Summing up, let me see. There is no company in good mind which would like to outsource the whole office or part of its office. They don't want to deal with it. On the other hand, there are not so many people who want to have just co-working, so that be 10-15% of people are ready to move totally to co-working. Due to many reasons, some have obligations for rent. Some other companies do not want to give everything to outsourcing. Well, the rest do not like the price. And they would prefer to refer and to outsource only some services. So people are trying to balance between do everything myself, repairment, furniture, or the other part of the balance could be I outsource everything. So, well, the balanced approach will be better here. And this is a very interesting niche where we have new players, new hybrid operators, and we'll see more and more of them. Thank you so much. I have a final question to all of you, and it will be about prognosis. Well, what is the craziest trend as you see it? So, what do you think will be the trend for the coming 2 years? What will happen with the market of real estate and offices, co-working places? So what will happen in the year 2 years? Because I don't think we can speak about 10 years ahead. We don't know what will happen there.
I can speak from the knowledge that I have from the UK. It might not be relevant to the situation in other countries. Either both my two co-speakers, I'm sure, can say more about that. I've written a report on co-working in the UK, which currently is responsible for something like 7% of new lets in the whole country. So it's big and growing. But what mainly is pushing it is the outsourcing phenomenon that we've just been hearing about on the one hand, and on the other, a legal system that is completely outdated, which is slow, which is tortuous, which requires a company to spend months negotiating a lease for property, then months and months fitting it out, then a long time getting the IT sorted, and so without any trouble you can lose a year. And traditionally you had to sign a very long lease, maybe used to be 25 years, now it's coming shorter, but this is a big burden on everyone. So the outsource offer is fantastic. And why I say all of this is because I think the reason that we've seen co-working growing so much is that actually it's a really important phenomenon around the world that is changing relationships between landlords and between tenants. It's changing relationships between big company owners and their employees. Because basically the system we had before, which in the UK dates from the 14th century, of legal relationships between landowners and tenants, is not fit for purpose. So if I had to make one prediction for the next few years, I think we will see continual attacks on what has been a very comfortable power structure that has meant that some of the grossest unfairnesses in society have been between those who owned land or owned buildings and those who needed access to them. I think that's actually the biggest thing behind what we're talking about in the world of work, that co-working has changed.
Not only do I totally agree, I mean, what we try to do, and again, talking about economies of scale, we want to let companies do what they do and not deal with if the internet is good, if the chair broke, if the lamp is on. So when you care about all these companies providing a service, and again, you become the amount of things that you have access to, or companies coming to us because of the size of the company today is amazing. So now, not only we can take advantage of that in a positive way, but we can also test companies in a good way also. Like, who is our coffee provider? So if the coffee provider doesn't align with our ethos and the way we want to change the world as a group and really focus on what is sustainable, then we might not buy coffee from that company. And we're testing and we're showing other countries these different types of products. So I think it's an interesting way of not only taking advantage of your scale, but also we want like-minded clients. We want like-minded people. We want people to feel embraced and taken care of. That not because you have this that works right now, that's going to be what you're going to be spoon-fed. No, we're learning. We're a company that the first rule is we don't know enough. We want to gather people that know more than us so we can learn much more. No?
Денис?
Dennis, you're right. We work in offices in this system, which was created in the 19th century. The slide, please. Let me bring about an example. In recent 1.5 months, we've met about 30 companies. And 25 of the 25 said the following. We've made our office in and the name of the year. This has changed and we need to change everything. So in this sentence, we can just change the name of the company, the date when they launched their office, and some things which changed. What could change? They became bigger or less. They had new CEO. They started more agile. And at that moment, they were still in the same office with no budget for different kind of furniture. No one ever thought that office would change, that office would be something which needs developing. So this is the moment you realize that it doesn't work. Office is no longer a story you can do once and for all. And this will change until we admit that offices are not churches. We needn't use a brick to construct them. Offices are something transparent, flexible, and the material should be also flexible. This is, by the way, the most important slide and the answer. In the very near future, our working spaces will not be of brick, of heaps built for centuries, because this is not what we need concerning the flexible environment which changes all the time. These changes are evident because, for instance, some departments become bigger, something gets closed, something changes, the whole structure changes, so the principle of construction needs to be changed. So the offices as an evolution will be constructed on the place, so with prepayment in the factory, and then you take it as a Lego and you construct it on the place. So everything becomes quite clear. The building is the inevitable element which was project once and for all by the owner, and the developer likes it also. So, well, this is the hardware which doesn't change, but the evolution is, and the speed of the changing of the iPhone, the hardware is much less than the change of the software.
We will no longer spend half a year to retrofit it just to paint the walls. It will be much faster in a much more flexible ways. You see, a project we launched recently, a constructor of offices. So in just a few days, you will be able to assemble an agile office for every scenario with different departments, from civil engineering, but it is made at a factory and then assembled on a site. Yeah, so we moved from a temple to a constructor. It all began very peacefully, without that much focus on politics, but the conclusion is you must hire professionals that will solve all your problems. So I also heard how a construction company also offers meals for people, and as we all work together, and we work 80% of our time in Moscow, thanks very much. It was a bit of a psychotherapy, and it was very exciting as well. Thank you.